Welcome to my PowerPoint on aggro decks from every class. So, back in March of the Lich King when Death Knight came out, there is a very powerful Undead synergy package. You used cards like Foul Egg, Skeletal Sidekick, Arms Dealer, Hawkstride Rancher to synergize very well together with the base tools of Death Knight. Foul Egg is a 1-mana 0/2 Undead with Death Rattle, summon a 3/3 egg. This synergizes incredibly well with cards like Arms Dealer, which is a 1-mana 1/2 Undead. After you summon an Undead, give it +1 attack. Or Skeletal Sidekick, 1-mana 1/2 Undead, give a friendly Undead +2 attack. Foul Egg, it has... wording. Foul Egg is great. It has an okay body because once you are able to give it that, 1 or 2 attack, you can bump it off. You'll summon a 3/3 Undead chicken, or technically a 4/3 if you have Arms Dealer up, and that gives you a lot of corpses. Hawkstrider Rancher also gives you a lot of corpses. 3 mana, 2/4. Whenever you play a minion, give it +1/+1, and Death Rattle, summon a 1/1 Hawkstrider. Works with Foul Egg. It gives you a lot of tokens, which gives you a lot of corpses, and it makes your board incredibly sticky. What is a really good thing to combine with decks that are incredibly sticky, you might be thinking? I wonder. Is it AoE board buffs that give attack? Yes, it is! Listener at home? Of course, you would run it in triple Unholy Death Knight, and you would run the card Grave Strength, which was 3 Unholy Runes, and it would give all friendly minions +3 attack for 5 corpses. Otherwise, it would give +1 attack. Or so give all friendly minions +1 attack. If you spend 5 corpses, give +3. You didn't run cards like Lord Marogar in that list, if I remember correctly. Don't quote me on that. I could be wrong. I didn't play the list very much. I was playing even Death Knight and Wild at the time, which is more fun. But this standard list, it was really good. Hawkstrider Rancher genuinely was a very powerful card. It buffed every minion you played after it because they would leave behind like a token. It made it so your Grave Strength and your it would make it so your Grave Strength was a lot better. You had other cards like Vicryl Necrolite, I think it's called. I could be very wrong in the name of that card. I haven't played it in a long time. It's a 2-mana 2/2 Undead. Battlecry, give a friendly minion Death Rattle, summon a 2/2 with Rush. 2/2 Undead with Rush. So again, it was a very good token for that card, and it's Death Knight, right? Death Knight loves to spend corpses, so having these extra 1/1s, and the minions would get +1/+1, so they were better, but having these extra 1/1s really did help fuel all the corpses that Death Knight wanted to be spending. And this is when Death Knight first came out, right? So this is like one of the first real aggro Death Knights. Obviously, right, like, again, in Wild, you could have just played even Death Knight if you wanted to play Unholy Death Knight, and it was a lot better. But this is one that is very fun. I kind of actually wish that I had played it at the time in Standard. I don't know, gun to my head, never would have played Standard. It was not a fun format for years and years. Like, Perils in Paradise has been one of the most fun Standard formats in a long time, and that says a lot, because it's also a really bad format, so it kind of says a lot about Standard. But this Death Knight deck really does exemplify, like, part of the issue with Death Knight, and the fact that, see that Skeletal Sidekick card? That came out 2 years ago at this point. There hasn't been a single other 1-drop that's been printed for Death Knight since that happened. I talked about that in my 1-drop video, but it's crazy. It's really crazy. Then we have Demon Hunter. So Odd Demon Hunter it's a deck of all time. It was really broken on launch, like really broken, but Demon Hunter was also really broken on launch, so it makes sense. It's, of course, an odd deck, so it gets an upgraded hero power, but because it's Demon Hunter, the hero power always costs 1. This is really strong for a bunch of different reasons. Not only do you just have 1 mana gain 2 attack this turn, which is just good. It is just a good hero power, do not get me wrong. But it synergizes incredibly well with a lot of different cards. One of which is Lowly Squire. Lowly Squire is a kind of not that great Inspire card. Most Inspire cards aren't that great, to be fair. But Lowly Squire kind of wasn't that good until Demon Hunter came out. And you could combine it because, well, Lowly Squire reads 1 mana, 1/2, Inspire, gain 1 attack. Inspire is after you use your hero power, do blank. So you would play Lowly Squire on turn 1, hero power either on turn 1 or turn 2. You could coin it, but and then you'd have a 2/2 that ramped, and it was really good. Speaking of 2/2s that would ramp, you had Battle Fiend. On release, Battle Fiend was a 1 mana 2/2 with after your hero attacks, gain +1 attack. Currently, it is a 1 mana 1/3 demon with after your hero attacks, gain +1 attack. They shifted the attack into its health after a while. It's not very good, I'm going to be honest with you. Battle Fiend kind of being a 2/2 with a good effect is kind of what made it a really good card, but whatever. Battle Fiend obviously synergizes incredibly well with Demon's Bite because you're attacking like every turn. You also had a lot of other cards that, I mean, look bad on paper, but because, you know, of the hero power, they really were good. Hench Clan Thug used to be a staple in Odd Rogue for the exact reason I'm about to say. You get to attack every turn. Is a 3 mana 3/3. Quillbore wasn't at the time because Quillbore didn't exist, but after your hero attacks, give this minion +1/+1. Super simple, but since you are attacking every turn, it was a 3 mana 4/4 that would always get more stats because you're attacking every turn. And it's really, really powerful. To top it off, you have the card Glaive-Bound Adept. It was a 5 mana 7/4, now it's a 5 mana 6/4, with Battlecry. If your hero attack this turn, deal 4 damage. Just 5 mana 7/4, deal 4 damage. That's crazy. It really is. That's a lot of stats. Like, a lot of stats. For a 5-drop, a crazy amount of stats, actually. Because typically 5-drops are like 5/6s or 5/5s, right? But being a 7 attack minion on a 5-drop that also has a good battle cry, yeah, it's no surprise that Odd Demon Hunter was really strong in Wild when it first came out. You just like were eating shit against this deck. It was punching you in the face every single turn. You were taking burn damage from cards like Glaive-Bound Adept. It had mana burn to make it so that you couldn't play cards because, well, it's an odd deck and it's a Demon Hunter deck, so it's always running mana burn because mana burn's one of the most broken cards ever printed. 1 mana, your opponent has 2 fewer mana crystals next turn? Holy goddamn shit, that card is broken as fuck. I love Odd Demon Hunter. I've played it so many times since it first came out. It's obviously really, really bad as time goes on because, well, 3-drops are significantly worse than 2 and 4-drops. Yes, 1-drops are better than 2-drops on average, but who cares? Right? You just hero power on 1 because you're playing Demon Hunter. So you kind of have like that bit of counter synergy of like, well, you know, a lot of odd decks like to play 1-drops because they can't really hero power in turn 1, but Demon Hunter can do that anyway. So it's like, well, fuck, right? Odd Demon Hunter, I'm not surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if this never comes back. Let's be real here. Like, it kind of doesn't function that well in today's game. It's just way too slow, way too inconsistent. You can't like do broken stuff. You can't run Sigil of Skydiving and Odd Demon Hunter, guys. Can't do it. So I doubt it will ever come back. Then we have Druid. So Gibberling Token Druid is one of the most like disgusting, insane token decks ever. If you don't know what Gibberling is, it was 1 mana, now it's 2 mana. 1/1, Spellburst, summon a Gibberling. Spellburst is at the first time you play a spell while this is out, it will do an effect. So summon a Gibberling, which that Gibberling would also have Spellburst, summon a Gibberling. You can already guess where I'm going with this, right? It's Druid, so you would obviously play a Gibberling on turn 1. You would play pre-nerf Lightning Bloom, you know, the one that would give you 2 mana crystals. You would play Innervate, and you get a giant full board of Gibberlings. And then in Wild, you would play cards like Mark of the Lotus, or I guess kind of Mark of the Lotus, because the list, or the cards that I'm showing are from like when Skullmance first came out, like the list that you would run in Standard. That's what I was looking for when I was doing this, but Standard lists would run cards like Soul of the Forest, which if you really high rolled, you could play Soul of the Forest on turn 1, which was disgusting. Because if you play Gibberling, okay, if you went second, your hand could be Gibberling, Lightning Bloom, Innervate, Coin, and then Soul of the Forest on turn 1, and then whatever your top deck, it doesn't really matter. You play Gibberling, you play Coin, Innervate, Lightning Bloom, you get 3 more Gibberlings, and then you play Soul of the Forest, and then your opponent's like, damn, dude, what the fuck do I do? Soul of the Forest, of course, was 4 mana, now it's 3 mana, it actually got buffed. Give your minions Death Rattle, summon a 2/2 Treant. So you just had like an ultra sticky board that you could then play Savage Roar into. 3 mana, give your characters +2 attack this turn. Token Gibberling Druid was so utterly broken. It was so broken. In Wild, you had cards like Embiggen that you could play because as another powerful 0 mana card to buff your Gibberling, and then because Embiggen was already just a good card anyway, Embiggen is give minions your deck +3/+3. They cost 1 more. It might be +2/+2, whatever. and then they cost 1 more. So it was already really strong because of pirates. Patches didn't have the cost negative side, like it didn't get its cost increased because you pull it from your deck. So you'd do that with your Gibberling stuff. You could have patches and like a 1-drop pirate at the same time as Gibberling. It was just so strong. It was so strong. I'm gonna be honest with you, I actually tried to find footage for this that was like good, so I could, you know, really talk about it, because that is what I do for some decks where I can't like remember them very well, to find like good footage. And every game, every single fucking game that was on like all the videos that I looked at were just turn 1 blowouts. Turn 1 blowouts that the opponent couldn't deal with. And yeah, that's what Gibberling Druid was. It was turn 1 blowout deck that your opponent could not deal with. It was disgusting. You know how like I joke and I make fun of like pirates for doing like 1 mana 8/5 on turn 1? Yeah, it was typically like 1 mana 21/21 on turn 1. If you had like Mark of the Lotus. I wish I was joking. It was so broken. It was so disgusting, this deck. Then we have Hunter. So this is Roscon's Rumble mid-range Hunter. Yeah. You can argue if mid-range is aggro all you want, whatever. I don't really care. This deck, oh, it was chef's kiss masterpiece of a deck. It ran new cards like Springpaw, which is a 1 mana 1/1 beast, rush, battlecry at a 1/1 links with rush to your hand. Rest in peace, fucking Murloc Growfin compared to this, dude. Holy. Springpaw was incredibly powerful at fighting for board and giving you another 1/1 with rush in hand for later. You ran cards like Flanking Strike, which is a 4 mana spell from Kobolds and Catacombs. Deal 3 damage to a minion, summon a 3/3 wolf. That was a really powerful, actually genuinely meta-defining card for a while. I'm not joking. Flanking Strike used to be one of the best cards in the entire game. Hunter used to have really good cards, guys. I know, right? It's crazy. You have Dire Frenzy, which is a 4 mana spell. Give a beast +3/+3. Shuffle 3 copies into your deck with +3/+3. That card was insane. You could put it on any beast that you really were running to get more value, to not go into fatigue, but you typically would put it on a Vicious Scalehide. Vicious Scalehide at the time was, not at the time, is a 2 mana 1/3 with rush and lifesteal beast, but you would use it at the time because aggro rogues were really good as well, and Dire Frenzy plus Vicious Scalehide just fucked Rogue. It just fucked Rogue. It couldn't deal with the amount of healing you were getting. The shuffle, like, in your deck didn't really do anything negative because, like, well, you were just gonna draw good Scalehides that you would draw a 2 mana 4/6 with Rush and Lifesteal. Wow, that's really strong. Tundra Rhino wasn't standard at the time as well, so like buffing minions from Dire Frenzy for your Tundra Rhino is really strong. Dire Frenzy is just such a cool card. I'm so surprised that we haven't gotten anything similar to it ever. We got like that Farmer card, which is a 3 mana 3/3, choose like a friendly beast, shuffle 3/3 copies of it in your deck, and that's not the same as Dire Frenzy. It really isn't, because Dire Frenzy buffs the minion on board, and it's a Hunter card, right? So not a neutral card. I don't count that as the same, because it kind of just isn't. And lastly, to top it off, you have Deathstalker Rexar, 6 mana, hero card, gain 5 armor, battlecry, deal 2 damage to all enemy minions, and the hero power was build a custom Zombeast. I'm not going to explain the Zombeast rules because I don't even know all of them off the top of my head, but basically it was beasts that were under 5 mana would go into 2 separate pools, and then it was like beasts that have keywords and then beasts that have like effects, right? So typically what you would try to aim for is, oh gosh, what's it called? Raptor Hatchling. Raptor Hatchling is a 1 mana 2/1 with Death Rattle, summon a Raptor Patriarch in your deck, and the Raptor Patriarch was a 1 mana 4/3, now it's a 1 mana 4/5, and you would typically try to hit that and Vicious Scalehide and a couple of other really powerful beasts, because, well, it was just an infinite value generator. So even if you are playing an aggro deck, you had infinite value. So you could just go late, and you were actually playing a control deck. I wish I was fucking joking. Deathstalker Rexar literally just, like, dominated control matchups. Like, the amount of value you got out of Deathstalker Rexar made it so this deck really didn't lose to slow decks. Like, Warrior could not deal with Deathstalker Rexar. If you got, like, 2 or 3 Raptor Hatchlings, you just won the game, because you would win in fatigue. That's how gross Deathstalker Rexar was. Dire Frenzy, of course, also helped into fatigue, but, dude, this deck was so awesome. It's so awesome. Like, they could genuinely Genuinely, there will never be another deck in Hearthstone that was this cool. Ever. It just cannot happen. It wasn't as strong as a full face deck as Baron's Face Hunter, which is, also one of my favorite Hunter decks. But the fact that it just could not actually lose to, like, Warrior control decks because of Deathstalker Rexar, that's something we will never see again. Because Deathstalker Rexar is fucking unplayable dogshit garbage in Wild. It's so terrible. It's like, I would genuinely make the argument that Deathstalker Rexar is the worst hero card in Wild. Not only because it's expensive, not only because it doesn't really do anything, not only because it's hero power to do nothing every turn, but because the beast pool is so massive in Wild, and over 80 to 90% of the beasts in the pool are actively bad. They are actively bad. I wish I was joking. Deathstalker Rexar is such a fucking sad card. I don't know what else to say. It's just so sad. I miss this deck with all my heart. Truly. I truly do. Then we have Mage. So currently in Wild, almost everything else on this list is not current. It's like things from the past. But currently in Wild, as we speak, there is a Tempo Mage, a Flamewaker Mage that is actually quite good. It makes use of Mana Worm, which is of course 1 mana 1/3. Whenever you cast a spell, gain +1 attack. Super powerful card, super iconic card. It got nerfed to a 1/2 years and years ago, and that was unplayable. It eventually got reverted, but it kind of just wasn't that good until now, and it's just really strong. You can use the card Rayla, Sand Sculptor, which is the 4 mana 2/6 Paladin Turris from Perils in Paradise. After you cast a spell, summon a random 2-cost minion and give it Divine Shield. Rayla herself is quite decent as a board generating tool with your Seabreeze Chalice, which, if you don't know, it's 1 mana, deal 2 damage, randomly split amongst all enemies. And then it's a drink card, so you have 3 uses of it. But the main use of Rayla is Divine Brew. 1 mana, holy spell, give a character Divine Shield if already had one, give it +1 attack this turn, 3 drinks left. You're mainly using it, Divine Brew, as just a 1 mana spell that you have 3 uses of, which is pretty decent. Mana Worm is a great target for Divine Shield, so it can stay alive longer. It will gain attack every single time you play a spell that lasts forever. It's not like Vicious Slither Spear, where Vicious Slither Spear is Mana Worm, but it only lasts until the end or start of your next turn. It only lasts until the start of your next turn. Unlike Mana Worm, which lasts forever. So Divine Brew is really great for Mana Worm. It's great for putting on your face to negate damage. The deck actually has some pretty good tools against a lot of, like, random decks. Like, Kingsbane Rogue is just, like, can't fucking play into this deck. Kingsbane kind of can't play into this deck because you just Divine Brew your own face, and then, like, what do? Hit you in the face with their weapon? Not really, because you have a Divine Shield. So you have, like, a lot of, like, strong interactions for this deck for some reason, no real reason at all, that makes it, like, really good into a lot of decks. And we haven't even talked about the namesake, Flamewaker. 3 mana 2/4, after you cast a spell, deal 2 damage, randomly split among all enemies. Flamewaker has seen so much play since it's come out. So many different tempo mages have run it because it just does a lot of damage. You can run Siphon Mana, which is a 2 mana arcane spell, deal 2 damage. Honorable Kill, which is when you deal exact damage. Reduce the cost of spells in your hand by 1, so you can have a full hand of 0-cost spells for Flamewaker. You can have Mana Biscuit, which is a 2 mana spell that is it's like Conjure Mana Biscuit, sorry, where you can it's a 2 mana spell to add a 0 mana spell to your hand, and the 0 mana spell is to refresh 2 mana, so you can use that with Flamewaker as 2 spell procs for 0 mana effectively. You can bank the mana Biscuit for your Rayla or your Flamewaker. It's just, this deck is so fun. It's so much fun. I do recommend looking it up. Copper Scum has probably posted a list somewhere if you want to look for someone like good who actually plays this deck. It's so much fun. It really makes you feel like you're playing old school Tempo Mage, and Mage has genuinely never had a deck this fun in years. There's not been a single Mage deck in either format that is even remotely this fun. I'm talking like 7 years. Like 6-7 years at this point. Nothing has even come close. Then we have Paladin. So Showdown Paladin is one of the most stupid fucking decks ever. Like, actually. The whole idea of, on release, you had Showdown, which was a 2 mana spell, now it's 3. Both players summon 3 3/3 outlaws, give yours rush. So it's 2 mana to summon 6 minions. 3 for yourself, 3 for your opponent, yours have rush. You then would combine it with Prismatic Beam. It was 7 mana at the time, deal 3 damage to all enemy minions. Cost 1 less for each enemy minion. You see where I'm going with this, right? You just played a 2-mana spell that gave your opponent 3 minions, so it reduces Prismatic Beam by 3, so it's +1 mana. It gives yourself 3 minions, so that's 6 minions, which means if you're running Ziliax during Whizbang's Workshop on release, you before Ziliax was nerfed twice on its Ticking Module got a +1 mana nerf from 6 to 7, I think that's the math. Yeah, it is. And then it eventually got another nerf where it went back to 6, but it's only friendly minions. So at the time, Showdown would reduce Ziliax's cost by 6. And Ticking Pylon, Pylon module used to be... wait, what's the... I might be wrong on this. 1 second. Sorry. Ticking module wasn't 6 to 7. I was thinking of Ziliax himself when he got nerfed. So Pylon module is 3 mana, and it's give all friendly minions +1/+1. It's also like a 1. I don't remember the stats. I don't remember the stats off the top of my head. I don't care. And then Ticking module is 4 mana. It was nerfed as 5 mana, because when they were combined, it was 7 mana and then 8. Anyway, it got bumped back down to 4 mana, and it's only friendly minions. So Showdown would let you play... it would give you a 1 mana Ziliax from your 2 mana card. Not joking. Your Ziliax would then cost 1 mana. You also ran Sea Giant, which is, if you don't know what Sea Giant is, it's a 10 mana 8/8, costs 1 less for each other minion on the battlefield. So it would discount your Sea Giant by 6. So if you played 2 Showdowns, you could then play a Sea Giant for free, Ziliax for free, or Prismatic Beam for free. I guess Prismatic Beam probably wouldn't be free, but you get what you get where I'm coming from. If you had one other minion on your opponent's board, it would be free. So you would destroy your opponent's entire board, summon a full board for yourself, and then you could buff it. And it was really, really goddamn strong. Like, if you did not play the Showdown in the Badlands, like, pre-Prismatic Beam nerf Showdown Paladin, holy shit, dude. That's all I can say. Holy shit, that deck was broken. You could run actually anything you wanted. I ran Rabble Bouncer, which is a 7 mana 3/7 taunt with cost 1 less for each enemy minion, because I could. Why not? It might be, actually, I think it's a 2/7. I haven't played I haven't played it in like 6 months at this point. When did it show on the bad? Whatever. Anyway, you could basically run anything because Showdown plus Prismatic Beam was so strong. It got nerfed instantly in Standard Prismatic Beam, and then Showdown was still too strong for Standard eventually and got nerfed again. And God, this deck was disgusting. It was truly disgusting. Like, I don't know how to say this any better. This is like one of the most disgustingly broken aggro decks ever. Because you also had cards like Deputization Aura that came out and showed on the Badlands. Deputization Aura was 3 mana, your leftmost minion has +3 attack, and lifesteal lasts for 3 turns. So, if you just... say you just were about to lose to your opponent. Nope, I actually just played Deputy Aura plus Showdown, and I just full healed myself. I healed for 18. Keck. Like, what the fuck? How unbelievably broken was Showdown in the Badlands for Paladin? Like, it's just genuinely not even funny. Then we have Priest. Okay, complain all you want. I know Dragon Priest is not technically an aggro deck, okay? I just don't want to talk about Shadow Priest. Shadow Priest is boring. I've talked about it a billion times at this point. So I'm going to talk about a fun deck. I get it's technically not an aggro deck, but it is a burn deck. So I'm going to... like, it was kind of more like a control deck that just burned you from the top, to be honest with you. Anyway, you would run dragons. You had a lot of powerful dragons that came out during, like, Kobolds and Catacombs or Mean Streets of Gadgetzan. You had cards like Duskbreaker, which is a 4 mana 3/3 dragon. Battlecry, if you're holding a dragon, deal 3 damage to all other minions. Really powerful removal card. This card even saw play recently during Whizbang's Workshop, how powerful it was in Dragon Priest, because, you know, Zarimi made Dragon Priest playable. Duskbreaker is really good. This is one of those cards that's like, yeah, it's obviously always going to be good as long as the cards around it are good. That's how powerful Duskbreaker is, truly. Twilight Acolyte, 3 mana, 2/4, Battlecry, if you're holding a dragon, swap this minion's attack with another minion's. So, because it's a 2-attack minion, you would typically get like 3, 4, 5 attack on your Twilight Acolyte and nerf your opponent's minion. And because it's 2 health, you could combine it with Cabal Shadow Priest. Cabal Shadow Priest was a 6 mana minion. I don't remember its stats off the top of my head, I'm sorry. With Battlecry, take control of an enemy minion that has 2 or less attack. So you just stole their minion because of Twilight Acolyte plus Cabal Shadow Priest. It was really good. The top end for this deck was Shadow Reaper Anduin. 8 mana, hero card, gain 5 armor, Battlecry, destroy all minions with 5 or more attack. Yeah, technically counter synergize with Twilight Acolyte, whatever. We're not talking about that. The hero power was, it's deal 2 damage, refresh every time you play a card. So, in conjunction with Mind Blast, which is 2 mana, shadow spell, deal 5 damage to the enemy hero, you would ping, Mind Blast, that's 7 damage. You could ping again for 9 damage. Then you play another Mind Blast for 14 damage. Then you could ping again for 16 damage. For 10 whole mana. Yeah, this was definitely back in Kobolds and Catacombs, guys. Like, you gotta realize that. You had Shadow Visions from Ungora, which is 2 mana spell. Discover a copy of a spell in your deck, so you could get more Mind Blasts for more damage, and you would just ping your opponent down. You would use dragons, because a lot of dragons have ways to discover other cards to fuel the pings of Shadow Reaper Anduin, and then eventually they would just get in range to get Anduin ping Mind Blasted to death. And it was fucking awesome. It was so goddamn awesome. I don't know what more to say. Like, playing Dragon Priest in this style of deck felt really good. You had really actually powerful removal cards, you had a really strong late game, and because of all the discover options that dragons in this era of Hearthstone had, you like never actually ran out of gas. You had, in Wild, you could play it with Netherspite Historian, you had Draconic or what is it? Is it Draconoid Operative? I think is what it was called. It was a 5 mana 5/6, now it's a 4 mana 4/5. If you're holding a dragon, discover a card from your opponent's deck, which is like a copy of a card from your opponent's deck. So you just had so many ways of generating more cards, and because you're generating more cards, you can get more pings in, and because you're getting more pings in, you can deal more damage to your opponent, and if you deal more damage to your opponent, you can get them in range for the Mind Blast combos. It was awesome. It just truly was awesome. Then we have Rogue. So, Forge in the Barrens is probably one of my favorite expansions. It really is. And guess what? We're talking about it again. Baron's Tempo Rogue. Baron's Tempo Rogue was a super draw-heavy archetype. You ran the card Field Contact, which I've spoken about before. It is a 3 mana, 3/2. After you play a Battlecry or a combo card, draw a card. You ran Efficient Octobot, which was 2 mana. Now it's 3. 1/4 Frenzy. Frenzy is the first time it takes damage. Do something. Frenzy. Discount all cards in your hand by 1. So, you would pop the Octobot with, like, say, Guardian Og Merchant, which is a 1 mana, 2/1, Battlecry, deal 1 damage to a minion, give it Divine Shield, or, like, other cards, you know, you would pop it somehow, discount your entire hand, and have a giant pop-off turn with Field Contact. You would run cards like Mancrick, which I have spoken about before, 3 mana, 3/4, Battlecry, help Mancrick find his wife, she was last seen somewhere in your deck. What that meant was you would shuffle a 3 mana spell into your deck that, when drawn, would summon a 3 mana, 3/10, or it wasn't 3 mana, actually. I think it was like a different mana cost, but whatever. It was a 3/10 that would attack your opponent's face. And that was it. It was really good, because it was just a big body that kept attacking. It eventually got nerfed to a 3/7. I think it's still a 3/7 today. I don't think they ever reverted it, but it was just really powerful. And since you were drawing so many cards, well, you would draw the spell. You had cards like Wicked Stab, rank 1. Ooh. It is a rank card, which is from Forge of the Barrens. Wicked Stab is 2 mana, deal 2 damage, upgrades when you have 5 mana. There are a lot of cards like this that came out in Forge of the Barrens. Basically, they're not that good at their initial cost, but once you hit 5 mana, they become efficient, and once you hit 10 mana, I want to say, it might be 8, I don't remember, I haven't played them in a while. Whatever, once you hit like 10 mana, they become really efficient. So, Wicked Stab would go from 2 to 4 to 6, which 6 is really good. I'm pretty sure it's 8, actually, I think it is 8. Anyway, Wicked Stab was a crazy amount of face damage, even just at the 5 damage. So you would play Tempo, and then you would burn your opponent down with cards like Wicked Stab. You also ran really powerful cards like Jandis Barov. 5 mana, 2/1, Battlecry, summon 2 random 5-cost minions. Secretly pick one that dies when it takes damage. So basically, you'll get 2 random 5-drops. If one of the 5-drops had Taunt, you would almost always pick the other option, because the Taunt minion wouldn't die, and it would protect the other minion. There are a lot of really good cards that you could get at the time. You could get other legendaries, like your Ra's Frost Whisper, which would, I'm not going to list off 5-drops. That's such a bad idea. I don't even remember half of them. So yeah, Jandis was just like an ultimate tempo card. Jandis was so strong, it got nerfed to 6 mana, and then compare Jandis at 6 mana to current Razzle Dazzler. Yeah, those 2 cards existed in the game. Both have existed in this game. It's insane, I know. But yeah, Jandis was super strong. Baron's Tempo Rogue was so strong. You just hit your opponent in the face real goddamn hard, and then you drew a billion cards, and then they died. They exploded. Isn't that what everyone wants when they play like a tempo deck, where you just play a bunch of cards early, then you have a super pop-off turn where you get to do a lot of stuff, and then your opponent explodes? That's tempo decks for you. Then we have Shaman. Aw, man, why is my thing not working? It wasn't... Okay, I got it fixed. I had to delete it and then redo it, whatever. It wasn't even anything crazy. It's just fucking Roll from Mega Man playing Whack-A-Mole because, you know, it's funny. Anyway, Elemental Shaman during United Stormwind was pretty gross. I keep saying that about a lot of decks, but a lot of decks that you remember are good for a reason. So, it ran the card Granite Forgeborn, which is a 4-mana, 4/5 elemental, was nerfed to a 4/4. Battlecry, reduce the cost of elementals in your hand and deck by 1. Holy shit, right? Like, Granite Forgeborn was so strong. You ran Kindling Elemental as well, which is a 1-mana, 1/2 Battlecry, reduce the cost of the next elemental you play by 1. So if you went second playing Shaman, it was correct to play Kindling Elemental on 1, not play any other elementals, even though it's technically a tempo loss, just so you could coin out Granite Forgeborn on 2. And then all of your cards cost 1 less. Every card in your deck basically would cost 1 less. Your Wailing Vapor, 1-mana, 1/3 elemental, after you play an elemental, gain +1 attack, would cost 1 less. So you could just spam out a bunch of elementals for your Wailing Vapor on the same turn, on turn 2, and then you just had a giant Wailing Vapor. You had Cage Match Custodian, which was a 2-mana, 2/2 elemental, Battlecry, draw a weapon. This would typically hit either Whack-A-Null Hammer, which is 3-mana, 3/2 weapon. After your hero attacks, give a friendly minion +1/+1. I think it was. It might be +2/+1. I'm pretty sure it was 1/+1, which was pretty decent, but you mainly just ran Doomhammer, 5-mana, 2/8 weapon, Wind Fury, Overload for 2? I think it was Overload 2. And, well, having a Wind Fury weapon's really good because you had cards like Rockbiter Weapon, which is 2 mana, give a friendly character +3 attack, or Storm Strike, which was 3 mana, deal 3 damage to a minion, give your hero +3 attack. So you could use those together to have a really powerful Doomhammer, or you would run Inara Storm Crash, which is a 5 mana, 4/5. On your turn, your hero has +2 attack and Wind Fury. So effectively, it gave you Doomhammer, but because it was a minion, it was easier to remove than Doomhammer was. This deck was really powerful. It was one of the best aggro decks during United in Stormwind. You basically just blew your opponent up. I don't know what better to say. They would take a shitload of damage from all your early elemental pressure, and then if you got late enough and they weren't dead, sometimes you just had, you know, Doomhammer up, and then sometimes you would just gain, like, +9 attack, like, from double Rockbiter Weapon and, Storm Strike, sorry. So you gain +9 attack for 7 mana, and then you had 2 attack on your Doomhammer, so you had 11 attack, and you just hit your opponent in the face twice for 22 damage. And a lot of times that won you the game. A lot of times just building a big Wind Fury weapon wins you the game. It's almost like we see that now in Standard with Horn of the Windlord. Big Wind Fury weapon, buff it through 1 and just kill it, deal a bunch of damage to your opponent, deal like 20 damage to your opponent. It's a good strategy. It just is a good strategy. Elemental Shaman, although this kind of Elemental Shaman, we haven't really seen anything like it before. We have seen different types of Elemental Shamans, of course. Ungoro had like an Elemental Shaman. Perils in Paradise just brought back Elemental Shaman because of Lamplighter. You know, the Elemental Shaman we see in Standard currently, or well, did see in Standard, was very different than this one. It wasn't about like drawing a weapon and then buffing yourself to do burst damage to your opponent. It was about playing an elemental every single turn, which is fine. You know, that is something elemental want to do. But before Perils in Paradise came out, you had Scar the Catastrophe, which Scar is a 7-mana 7/7, which, you know, deal damage to all enemies equal to elementals you played like each turn in a row, versus Lamplighter, which was a 3-mana 3/2, deal damage equal to an enemy equal to elementals you played in turn row. It's pretty obvious that Lamplighter is way better than Scar. It was less than half the mana on release, so it's significantly easier to use. You can play 2 of them in the same turn. You could play 1 and then bounce it and then play it again in the same turn. You can't do any of that to Scar. You can't play more than 1 of them in the same turn. So it's pretty obvious that like Elemental Shaman has had some growing pains. I've talked about it a million times that I do like Elemental decks. I think it's one of the more interesting tribes because of the, you know, like played last turn thing is kind of just cool to play around. But I don't know. Let's move on because I've talked about Elemental Shaman enough. Then we have Warlock. So Dark Moon Fair Zoo Warlock is one of the best Zoo Warlock decks like ever. I didn't talk about this one in my Zoo Warlock video because I kind of wanted to save it for if I ever had to talk about like aggro Warlocks specifically, because this is like the best or the coolest version of Zoo Warlock in my opinion. I know I made that video talking about how I don't like Warlock decks, but I specifically said I do like Zoo Warlock. I just don't like any of them in particular. I probably should have put this one on the list. I probably should have. I just didn't. I was being facetious and wanted to make a joke about how Warlock is cringe and I hate it, okay? Anyway, it's Zoo Warlock. You obviously ran the Goat Flame Imp. You ran Void Walker. You know, all these really powerful demons that we've grown to love. Flame Imp, of course, is a 1-mana 3/2 demon. Battlecry, deal 3 damage to your hero. Voidwalker was a 1-mana 1/3 taunt demon. And then you ran Canrathad Ebonlock. I've talked about Canrathad before, where it's fucking Demon Mech Warper. 2-mana 3/2, your demons cost 1 less. Death Rattle, shuffle Canrathad Prime in your deck. You didn't care about that very much. Actually, that was kind of a downside to the card a lot of time. So Canrathad would let you play all of your like 1-cost, 2-cost demons for incredibly cheap. So cheap. It let you just dump stats out on the board. You could then buff them with cards like Wriggling Horror, which is a 2-mana 2/1 Battlecry, give adjacent minions +1/+1. This card was really powerful at the time. You had Wicked Whispers, which also came out during Darkmoon Faire, which is a 1-mana Warlock spell, which is discard your lowest cost card to give all minions +1/+1. That card saw a lot of play. And then you have honestly one of the best designed aggro cards ever in Revenant Rascal. 3-mana 3/3 Battlecry, destroy a mana crystal for each player. Yup. Super simple. Genuinely a very simple effect, and it's one of the best designed aggro cards ever. Because all it does is it tells your opponent, no, we're staying on turn 3 for another turn. No, you're not playing your 4-mana removal, no. And that's good. Making it so your opponent stays on turn 3 for 2 turns instead of 1, so they can't play their really powerful turn 4 removal, is really good. It really is really good. Whoever could have guessed that? How do I word this? Revenant Rascal, like, it's just so awesome. I'm sorry. Like, it had an awesome voice line too. It goes like, I think. I might be wrong. I haven't played the card in years. I haven't played it in like 5 years or 4 years at this point, let's be honest. But Revenant Rascal was awesome. I loved this Darkmoon Faire Zoo Warlock. It just, it goes into my soul to talk about this deck. It's in my soul. It's one of, if not the coolest Zoo Warlock decks ever. And what more do you need? What more do you need than a Zoo Warlock, which is just cool, where you just dump your whole hand and then you tell your opponent, nuh-uh, you don't get to play cards, and that's funny. It just was funny. You could also run cards like, during United and Stormwind, they printed a lot more like Zoo Warlock support, and there's the card Shady Bartender, which is like a 5-mana, I don't remember the stats, tradable minion that would give all demons +2/+2, and that card was really fucking funny in this deck. It was so hilarious in like that kind of Zoo Warlock, because it was just like a random ass common card that most people forgot about. So you would be playing Zoo Warlock during United and Stormwind. People would expect you to be playing Questline Warlock, and then you would just build a big board of like kind of like mediocre demons. You went really wide, and then you just drop your fucking Quartermaster, because that is Quartermaster. That is a Quartermaster. Quartermaster is a 5-mana minion that gives your Silverhand recruits +2/+2, and that card was broken for a long time. So you play Demon Quartermaster, and your opponent just blew up. Awesome. So awesome. And then lastly, we have Enrage Warrior. So this is from the Showdown the Badlands. Enrage Warrior is where I got this one from. Technically, all these cards are from like all the 3 of the cards are from Nathria, and then this one is from Festival of Legends. So we'll get into that. The way that it really, like, this version of Enrage Warrior really worked was through Anima Extractor. Anima Extractor is a 2-mana 1/4. Whenever a friendly minion takes damage, give a random minion in your hand +1/+1. So you had cards like Crazed Wretch, which is a 3-mana 1/4 with +2 attack and charge while damage that uber benefited from Anima Extractor buffing it. You had Decimator Olgra, which was a 6-mana 3/7 Battlecry, gain +1/+1 for each damage enemy minion, then attack all enemies. So that card also uber benefited from Anima Extractor. This deck, look, technically speaking, Enraged Warrior is a combo deck. Technically speaking, however, it did play very aggressively. It fought for board aggressively. It just did everything as aggressively as possible. You had cards like Imbued Axe, a 3-mana 2/3 weapon that's after hero attacks, give your damage minions +1/+2. It used to be +1/+1. Infuse 2 +2/+2 instead. What a fucking crazy card, by the way. Like, this is a 3 durability weapon that if you infuse it twice, gives all of your minions +2/+2 as long as they're damage. So +6/+6 total. That's crazy. Like, Hope of Quel'Thalas is a 6-mana weapon that gives all minions, like, in your hand, deck, and battlefield +1/+1. Like, yeah, Imbued Axe has a condition of, like, oh, they have to be damaged, and they have to be infused, but the card is still 3 mana, and it gives them +6/+6. It's insane. You also had a lot of very powerful cards that could damage your own minions, like Jam Session, 2 mana, fire spell, give a friendly minion +3/+3, deal 1 damage to all other minions. So it wasn't just a lot of, so it wasn't just a lot of, like, really powerful Enrage effects. It also had a lot of really powerful, like, Whirlwind effects. I still believe Jam Session is, like, a really broken card. It sees plenty of play in Standard, sees play in Wild. Jam Session is just so powerful, even though it has Overload 1, like, so. It's 2 mana +3/+3, which is already like higher than average, because usually they're 2 mana +2/+3, or 3/2, or 2/2, etc. for 2 mana. And it is a Whirlwind effect, so not only can it kill your opponent's minions if you set it up, or they just have 1 health minions, but it also damages your own stuff. Enraged Warrior is really cool, I'm going to be honest with you, even though it's really unpopular. I mean, really unpopular. Many of you may remember that there was a long-standing, like, hatred for Warrior for the last, like, I don't know, from Sunken City post-Warrior nerfs until, like, Festival of Legends, where Warrior was like, oh, Warrior's so bad, Warrior's terrible, Warrior's unplayable. It just wasn't. It actually just wasn't. Enraged Warrior was, like, a genuine fucking tier 1 deck during that era at, like, 2 or 3 different points. I'm not fucking joking. And it was genuinely a tier 1 deck at, like, 2 or 3 different points when it came out, but people would not play it. Would not play it because it's boring and they don't like it. It's the same way that Lion Hunter is currently in Wild, where, like, yeah, Hunter has a good deck. I mean, not right now. It's kind of like low tier 2 because of the meta, but it has, like, a pretty good deck, but who wants to play it? No one wants to play it. This is why I always talk about Blizzard not actually understanding what class mains or, like, want to play for their classes. Why are we designing cards for classes that are for, like, nobody? Warrior, Hunter, Demon Hunter, like, a lot of classes aren't very popular overall. Like, yeah, Control Warrior is really popular, but Enraged Warrior is not popular in the slightest. No one likes playing it. It's never been popular. Pirate Warrior hasn't been that popular aside from when it's really broken. So, like, why do they do this? Why do they print cards for classes that nobody wants to play with? They print cards for classes that, like, class mains don't want to play with. Most class mains don't really like this style of Enraged Warrior. They like Skipper Warrior, don't get me wrong, but they don't like this, like, buff kind of Enraged Warrior. Hunter players, like, I have never met someone who actually likes Hunter that likes playing Big Hunter. Never. I've met people that like playing, like, Cleave Hunter, or, like, Spell Hunter, or Face Hunter, Mid-Range Hunter, Secret Hunter. I've never met someone who actually has over 1,000 games on Hunter, or 1,000 wins on Hunter, that likes playing Big Hunter. Never in my life. I don't know, like, what the fuck do I say to that? Like, I ask the people this all the time. They don't fucking like it. So why do they print it? It's the same thing for this Enraged Warrior stuff. Like, why do they print it? I like Enraged Warrior, personally, but I'm not, like, a big Warrior player. I don't have that many wins on Warrior overall. So, like, who are they making these cards for? People who are going to play it, like, once or twice, like, ever, and be like, oh, yeah, that was fun. Or Warrior players that are playing Warrior all the time. I don't get it. Anyway, that's going to be it from me. If you guys enjoy, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Tell me what you think down below. Do you like any of the decks that I've listed below? Do you like Aggro as an archetype? I'm going to be doing one of these for combo and control. Of course, I just want to talk about, like, the basics of, like, how these classes kind of do these things. That's kind of what I was going for with this video. Like, different kinds of, like, some classes don't really have very many aggro decks. Priest kind of only really has Shadow Priest. That's why I didn't talk about it. Warrior kind of really only has Pirate Warrior. Kind of why I didn't talk about it. I talked about something else instead. So it is interesting because we're gonna get to Hunter, and like, Hunter doesn't necessarily have control decks, but Hunter has big decks, and big decks are like, I mean, they're close enough to control decks sometimes. Like, that Katharina Hunter is close enough, but there's not really a Hunter control deck. There kind of really hasn't been an actual Hunter control deck. Unlike, you know, every class has had an aggro deck. I just didn't want to talk about boring ones because I've talked about them a billion times already. But yeah, that's going to be it for me. If you guys enjoyed, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.
Shadows are rising again!
Darker than they've ever been.